From KYCU-TV 5 in Cheyenne, Wyoming, this is News Source 5.
Good evening, I'm Susan Saltero, and this is a special edition of News Source 5. 11 people are dead, 4 still missing, and about 70 injured as a result of the devastating flood which hit Cheyenne last night. The dead include Laramie County Sheriff Deputy Robert Van Allen. While attempting to save a 6-year-old girl, both were swept away into Dry Creek just off College Drive. A 76-year-old woman drowned with her dog in the basement of her home. The 16-year-old daughter of a Cheyenne police detective, Leo Pondo, was killed. Don Shaner, the former executive director of the Wyoming Education Association and a former state legislative candidate, died from a heart attack while bailing out his home. The other victims range in ages from 3 to 27. All have been identified except for the heart attack victim and the woman who drowned in her basement. All others were swept into the Dry Creek off College Drive. A sunrise over the city of Cheyenne. Usually a sunrise symbolizes a fresh new start, but not today, not after last night. At 7:20 last evening, Cheyenne was greeted by an enormous green cloud. The Weather Service spotted a funnel and as quickly informed the public this was only the beginning of the chaos that followed. Shortly afterwards, the tornado took a bow and touched down near the Wycon chemical plant, about 5 miles west of town. Luckily, the tornado seemed to be stationary, and it wasn't long before the funnel returned to the enormous green cloud it once was. As one witness described it, the cloud looked like it could have sucked up the entire city. The civil defense was quick to respond and sent spotters out, but there were no more tornadoes to be seen. But the storm caught its second wind then, and the skies opened up. When all was said and done, the Weather Service reported 6.06 inches of rain in a period of 3.5 hours. With the rain came the hail, stacked to over 4 feet in some areas and still present when the waters receded. But with the two of them came the floods, flash floods, sudden, unexpected, and devastating. At the time the flooding was occurring, horror stories surfaced. An officer was swept away with a child on his back. People were missing. For a while, the threat of the Cox Ranch Dam breaking was a major concern. Only 5 miles west, it would take an hour for the wall of water to reach the city. People on Crow's Creek Path were evacuated just in case, but the dam held. When the water started receding, the reality of it all settled in. Cars were stacked on top of cars like toys. Basements were full of water. People were still missing. And worse, there had to be a morning after. They're calling it a classic, the granddaddy of them all. Where did this storm come from? What happened?
Last night, Cheyenne had probably, I would dare say, one of the strongest thunderstorms I've seen in the Wyoming area, and for that matter, in the Front Range area. Here we had, at the height of the storm, which is about 8 o'clock last night, tops to 64,000 feet. Now let me put that into perspective. That was a thunderstorm that's probably over 12 miles high in vertical height. And it literally formed to the east of Cheyenne and backed up westward over the city so that it sat right over the city and right over the top of the Weather Service. This was a thunderstorm, what meteorologists call a steady state thunderstorm. That is, it didn't move, it just kind of fed on itself, feeding energy into it.
Stalled storms are the worst kind, and they've been known to wipe out entire populations at once, especially in our area. They're accompanied by the works, heavy rain, large hail, and tornadoes. We got all three and did better by setting 2 new records for precipitation fall, 3.5 inches in an hour, 6:20 for the storm. Unfortunately, that little incident wasn't enough for Mother Nature, though. She still wants to serve us another round of shower activity.
We feel that there are some things that are showing. The winds, for example, are now to the northwest where they were southeast yesterday. A couple little signatures that we look at that indicate that maybe Cheyenne won't see as much tonight. But let me add this caveat. If the thunderstorms develop in Colorado, the upper level wind flow is such that they'll carry right over the city. So that's the reason for the watch area. The storm that formed yesterday was really what we call a once-in-a-century or once-in-200-year storm. The probability of that happening again is very, very low. You can't rule it out. But just just having rains like we've had the last 2 or 3 weeks in Cheyenne will certainly pose problems over and above what we've had already. So that's why we're raising the flag, so to speak, and expressing some concern. What you see yesterday, hopefully you'll never see again in your life. It's just that kind of storm. But nevertheless, the potential's there, and we want to draw people's attention to that fact.
It's not all bad. The dam on Cox Ranch is holding steady, and forecasters are predicting only about an inch of rain with these new storms. Nevertheless, it's always a better idea to keep an eye on the sky and an ear tuned to the latest weather conditions. And there's more good news. We have just been notified by the Sheriff's Department that all missing have been accounted for. We'll be right back. The people who perhaps played the biggest role in this disaster were the people who were picking up the pieces while the pieces were still falling. Wanda Oldham has that story.
When the clouds first burst last night, the emergency operations were functioning normally. Then a flood of water forced the command post to be moved to a trailer located in the alley behind the Laramie County building. But it didn't stop there.
Because of the power line system that we have, a transformer feeding the fire department, police department, and the sheriff's jail, and also the EOC and 911 center, because of the flooded basement in the police department, shorted that out and blew the transformer. We then had to pack everything back up and move over here to the municipal building, and then restart again.
The county civil defense director says Cheyenne had a twofold disaster.
One is that we have a tornado warning. The sirens go off, and then about maybe a minute, 2 minutes later, we have a flash flood warning. When that happens, then your opposite has to appeal. You have to take, they want you to go to the low-lying areas for a tornado warning. They want you to go up higher elevation for a flash flood warning. So here we are. We talk about the '79 tornado as being disastrous, and it was. And it was totally took an effect upon the community of Cheyenne. But this is worse because we couldn't see last night. We couldn't find people. We had many missing reports of people. Hopefully most of them have been found by this hour. It's a really ironic thing that this should happen. I have never seen so much water come down 19th Street, Pioneer, Cary. I've lived in Cheyenne since 1957. It's just devastating. The entire community is a hero. We made it, and now we've got to clean it up, and we're going to start again, and we hope that this never happens again.
While the county coordinator was pleased with the rescue efforts, an official on the state level noted a breakdown in communications.
Due to the storm's intensity, the main lines of communication, which is telephone, went down in many areas. In addition to that, the telephone communications and other radio communications used by the essential services such as law enforcement, medical, and fire were also affected due to power outages caused by flooding of their facilities. Because of that, it did result in coordination problems. Everyone had to exercise patience under the circumstances, okay? And it was an extraordinary situation where if you can't talk to one another, it's very difficult to get the job done.
Already one sheriff's deputy has died while trying to rescue a little girl from this creek bed. So law enforcement officials are taking extra precautions during their rescue efforts.
At this point, we're conducting basically a foot search with some air support from the Air Force, and searching the area from College Drive east, probably all the way to the water plant along the dry creek. Now, the problem we have is we have to have our people roped together because the mud is so deep and the edges are so soft that they're falling in, and we're going to lose somebody else if we're not careful.
The role of the federal government is uncertain at this point. Federal emergency aid personnel are on their way to Cheyenne to assess damages. That team will make a recommendation to the governor, and he will then determine if it's appropriate to apply for a presidential declaration. The Wyoming congressional delegation has alerted the White House, but the request for presidential emergency declaration must be made by the governor, and as yet, Herschler has not made such a request. Joe Hill will now explain the damage the flooding has caused Cheyenne.
And on top of that, we'll tell you how this city suffered in this disaster. There is not one person in the Cheyenne area who is not directly or indirectly affected by the storm. Joseph Hill takes a look at the damage the storm caused to the city.
It was as if a giant, powerful water hose sprayed the city. The debris left by the fury of last night's storm is a grim reminder of the wrath of nature. Nothing was spared, not the homes, not the streets, nor the cars, or even the businesses downtown. City and county government buildings were both damaged.
The damage is obviously water damage in basements. The Civic Center, for instance, over here has got about 15 feet of water in the basement, which is a large basement where the boiler is. We've got several other buildings throughout the city that have suffered a lot of water damage, either going into the basement or coming in through the walls because of the level of water. So we do have a significant amount of water damage, yes.
Other agency offices suffered water damage, including the Civil Defense, located in a basement that they share with the Cheyenne Police Department. The police department was also damaged by water.
Yes, the police facility is gone. We had, I think, a portion of the roof collapse. We had a fire in our power room. It looks like we won't be in there for a good 3 or 4 or 5 days. So we're going to try to sit up in City Hall for the next few days at least.
The city buildings will be covered by insurance for most of the hail damage, but it has no flood insurance.
Insurance policies don't usually cover flood insurance unless you buy it separately. It's very expensive to buy, and for obvious reasons we don't purchase it because this sort of thing only happens, hopefully it won't happen again. So we do not have any, quote, flood insurance.
Bill Springer, the risk manager for the city, says the devastation was widespread. The dollar amount is unknown at this time, but the toll will be high.
All I can say, Joe, is that it's going to be in the millions of dollars. As far as getting you an accurate figure, whether it's 5 million or 10 million or more than 10 million, I really can't say. We've got our insurance people coming in right now.
The Cheyenne city government will seek aid for flood-related damage.
As the majority of our damage is related to water, then we're going to have to seek another area for financial assistance, that being either the state government or federal government. If it's
Don Pack, the director of environmental health for the city of Cheyenne and Laramie County, says right now there's no problems with water contamination or sanitation.
At this point in time, we've not received any comments along those lines, and it appears that everything is fine at this point in time.
Pack had this advice for clearing water from a basement.
And there what we're recommending is to be sure that the individuals that do the cleaning do wear protective clothing during an operation. We're looking at wearing plastic gloves that can be thrown away or completely washed and disinfected after the operation. And then also recommending wearing some type of covering for the feet, be it boots, whatever, that can be either disposed of or completely washed.
News Source 5's Carla Chandler looks at the human tragedy of last night's storm.
August 1985. Snow clouds are on the street in Cheyenne. The hailstorm has made some parts of town look like winter, and it's created devastation in people's lives.
They're in a state of shock. I don't know if you have feelings or not. You're numb.
This is what the storm did to Lois and Garth Lee's downstairs living room. Lois was there when it happened.
I was standing in the living room, and pretty soon the water just kept rising and the wall bulged out, and then the wall just gave away, and all the water and the mud just started running in.
It was real scary. The wind was blowing and didn't know what to do. Didn't even have time to move my car, it come in so fast.
People all over town were trying to remove the hail. In some places it looked like an earthquake had hit. Some people were digging their cars out or siphoning water out of their basements. The people who live in this house were having a family reunion when the storm hit. There were 19 people there, and they just finished eating dinner.
We heard about a tornado. We went down the basement. Basement wells filled it up with ice. The ice broke in the windows. Everybody went upstairs, went down, got my bags, and as my husband and my father came upstairs, the water followed them up.
The water came in from the basement, from the garage. Water came in from the front, and the only dry person in the house was the cat, and he jumped up on my bed.
Right now, the Nelsons are cleaning up the mess and trying to cope with the damage the storm caused.
Everything in my basement is total. That includes my family room, all my VCR, recording equipment, camera equipment, everything I got.
And I've got pictures in there that was taken over 100 years ago of my husband's ancestors and stuff. Will never be replaced, you know. So what can you do but laugh at it? Why cry? I did enough crying last night.
Ann and Bob Frederick's basement looks like this. Last night the water came all the way upstairs, 8 inches above the living room floor. The Fredericks ended up spending the night in their motorhome in the backyard. Now they're trying to get their lives back together.
It's bad. There's nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
Just out of everything. All our insurance papers and everything are lost.
The storm has caused a lot of sadness, but probably few people are sadder than this woman who found her drowned dog on a fence. Carla Chandler, News Source 5.
Definitely an unforgettable experience. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with a look at a special kind of hero. We now bring you the story of a man who gave his life last night to save others. He was a Laramie County Sheriff's deputy.
It can be said that Laramie County Deputy Sheriff Bob Van Allen lived a life of a man who dedicated his existence to helping others, giving his service to his fellow man. It is an overused cliche that he lived his life as a hero and died like one, but Bob Van Allen, who saved 2 lives, was among the heroes yesterday.
He was an incredibly brave person. He had a rope tied around his waist and had gotten the other end tied around a telephone pole. And he had gotten 2 people out of a vehicle and went back for a little girl that was in the vehicle and had the little girl on his back, and somehow the rope came loose, we don't know how, and he and the little girl were swept away. We had one of our reserve officers, they were attempting to get 2 other people out of a vehicle, and he was swept off his feet and went underwater through the drainage ditch underneath College Avenue, and was underwater all the way through College Avenue and managed to come up at the other end and get pulled out. There was just a multitude of those kind of occurrences. People wading in up to their necks trying to get people out of vehicles.
Lots of heroics. Thank you.
Another, he was a member of the Wyoming National Guard, the Cheyenne Police Department, and the Green River, Wyoming Police Department. In almost all these services of duty, he was awarded many medals for his valor and heroism, including such incidents as the Mount St. Helens volcano disaster. He won the Cheyenne Certification for Recognition of Heroism in 1976 for talking a man out of leaping off the Plains Hotel roof. Heroism was not a rare thing to this rare man. It was a way of life, and he will be missed.
Well, it's a tragedy. We just lost an officer about a month ago to a drowning, and now this, and it's going to hit us hard. He was a fine officer. He was a good friend to all of us, and it's going to be tough to live with.
Joseph Hill, News Source 5.
No one can estimate the extensive damage of the tragic flood of August 1st. Many people have lost valuable possessions worth either dollars, memories, or both. The employees of KYCU-TV and local radio stations have established the Cheyenne Association of Broadcasters Relief Fund to assist the Salvation Army in helping flood victims. The broadcasters' employees have made an initial $1,000 contribution to the fund to help. Send your check to the Cheyenne Association of Broadcasters Relief Fund in care of the Salvation Army, P.O. Box 453, Cheyenne, Wyoming, 82003. Help the Cheyenne broadcasters, help Cheyenne.
We want to take this opportunity to mention some of the other heroes during yesterday's tragedy. Members of A1 Ambulance who risked their lives responding to 34 calls just yesterday alone. And of course, all the members of the law enforcement community, which includes the city police, the sheriff's department, civil defense, support agencies, National Guard, all the volunteers, and for the thousands who are just too numerous to mention. We also want to commend our photographers for a job well done. Keith Bembenek, Bill Schmeckel, and last but not least, Pat Lewis. They all risked their lives to bring the story of the flood into your homes. And by the way, Susan, there were many people that have been reacting to this flood. Some of the comments, one was there was a party at the Mayflower. People who got flooded out of their homes decided to go into the bars and
well, that's one way of looking at it, looking at the good side of a disaster.
That's right. And some of the other things I'd like to repeat is that all the missing people have been found. There are 11 people that died, including the sheriff's officer and the daughter of a Cheyenne police officer.
Mm-hmm. Does it look right now like there will be recovering more bodies in the future?
As far as they know, all the missing persons have been found. They were afraid that the father of a 3-year-old that was missing, they couldn't find the father, but Roger Domsky, the coroner, called me and said that the father was found.
Oh, that's good news. Also, some more good news. The 40% chance of showers that we had for this evening has been downgraded to a 20% chance of showers. So it looks like someone upstairs is looking down on us and helping us a little bit. Also, for tomorrow, we are calling for partly sunny skies with a 20% chance of showers once again, which is what we normally have this time of year.
And if there is a flood tonight or lots of rain, people can always call the mayor's office for anything, for pumps. The mayor has opened up his office for that type of situation. And then there are a lot of people that found out that they don't have flood insurance. The city officials are working very hard on getting state and federal aid.
And that's good news. It's always good news to see how a disaster seems to bring people together. And we were more than happy to bring this to you. And anytime we can be of help to you, we would like to do that too.
Great. I think that's all the time we've got.
Thank you for joining us. Join us again at 10 o'clock tonight.
Good night.